Having again asked for forgiveness, Harry said that he ended up in Ward 1401 on the advice of one of the patients, who also advised him to visit the head nurse's room, but now does not have such an opportunity. Jake stops him, reminding him that he didn't give the president his money, so he has nothing to apologize for. Unexpectedly for the main character, Harry begins to apologize for his behavior, explaining that he has no choice. The guy wondered why the class president came to him, and, assuming that he would ask for help in completing the task, he immediately refused. As Jake leaves the room and wonders how the others did, he runs into Harry standing in the hallway. Having bribed the old man with alcohol again, the main character copes with his task without much difficulty. But the classmates, filled with confidence in their abilities, are not going to give up and intend to persistently go to the end. Jake says that there is no reason for them to stay now, because if they die in the secret world, then they will die in the real one. It turned out that Harry, Lilith, and Bart had already lost their resurrection points. Harry comes out into the hall and asks the others if they have resurrection points, to which there is an awkward silence. Unprepared for suffering, despite the presence of resurrections, no longer wanted to participate in this test and are going to leave the secret world. Each of the dead had their own spirit, but only their classmate Eva was able to survive by signing a contract in a secret world. Such tasks were very difficult for their class, so many did not want to take on them, and besides, 13 people in the class had already died. The students are vigorously discussing a new task, which was to give patients a forced injection. A perplexed Harry asks why he has to die if the hero made it out alive, and promises that he will be the one to collect the reward for the special task, after which they go their separate ways. The class president tells him not to stand in his way, to which the hero indifferently replies that he does not care about Harry's death, but advises him not to go to the 14th floor. Suddenly, Harry meets him on the way, holding the same flashlight and probably performing the same task. Walking up the stairs, Jake again thinks about prizes, about a prestigious university, about his family, and firmly decides that he must pass this difficult test. Sophia asks the guy if he will come to play with her again, to which he answers in the affirmative and leaves the roof. Jake and Sophia return to the roof again, and when she opened her eyes again, the hero, to please her, handed her a huge lollipop. Sophia at that moment felt unwell, and she asked the guy to leave, to which Jake agreed on the condition that she would not open her eyes. When the main character thought that the crucified nurse was dead, this terrifying scene began to repeat itself again and again. But at that moment, the mystery cut off his tongue with a quick swing of the knife. The nurse, noticing Jake behind the slightly open door, began to beg him for help. Such a terrible picture made the main character feel sick, and he abruptly covered Sophia's eyes with his hand so that she would not see what was happening in the ward. The nurse continually apologizes to the nurse and begs for his life as she plunges a knife into his throat. In the ward, Jake sees a terrifying picture of a nurse with a knife mocking a nurse chained to a cross. Together they arrive at the room in which the actions from the video and the found phone took place. Then the guy asks the already cheerful girl if she will keep him company, to which she agrees. To cheer Sophia up, they go together to the vending machine to buy sweets. Studying the clues, Jake calms the crying girl and says that he came to play with her. On the roof he meets a little girl named Sophia. His guess turns out to be correct, and when he manages to escape from the nurse, he continues to look for clues on the roof. The hero remembers that ordinary secrets were afraid to cry, so he decides to run to the roof, from where women's screams could be heard at night. Trying to defend himself, Jake points the flashlight at the nurse, but its light turns out to be harmless to her. Because of his scream, Mystery discovers him and rushes at the guy with a knife. Very frightened, the hero screams and shines a lantern in his face to drive away the evil spirits. Just as Jake was glad that he had not been noticed, secrets surrounded him from behind. At first he thought it was the head nurse, but then he saw that it was an ordinary Mystery walking around the floor with a knife in her hand. When the hero has reached the desired floor, he hears the sound of heels and decides to hide to reconnoiter the situation. On one of the fragments, he nevertheless notices the number of the chamber in which everything happened, and progress immediately increases to 60%. After watching the video, the progress of the task has not changed in any way, so Jake decides to watch it again in search of clues. In it, he sees an unknown man trying to rape the head nurse. In order not to die at the hands of the Mystery, the hero decides to shine the light of the flashlight directly into the phone screen, which ultimately saves him and allows him to watch the original video. When the guy in the video cut his cheek, a cut immediately appeared on Jake's face and he realized that the video was synchronized with him. Clicking on it, the main character saw himself looking straight through the phone screen. The phone still worked, and now the guy could watch the mysterious video. Remembering the metaphorical system prompt, Jake decides to wait until evening to continue the special task. Arriving in his room, the main character unsuccessfully tries to turn on the found phone. Meanwhile, Harry, with the help of his sword, appropriated the money of the other students, and when he saw that this time Jake only got 50 coins, he was glad that he did not cooperate with him. To the hero's surprise, when he was already thinking of defending himself from the head nurse with his scissors, she believed him and ordered him to get off the roof. Jake says that he had already found the patient from room 404, but the stench in his room was so strong that the guy needed to go out onto the roof to get some fresh air. It was the head nurse who first of all asked the hero what he was doing here. Just when he was happy that he had found the key item for this quest, he sensed an ominous aura behind him. Suddenly he notices a cheap phone on the roof, picking it up and raising the progress of a special task to 50%. Having reached the roof, the guy notices that he sees neither the road along which he came, nor other buildings, only the red sky. This patient also warns the guy that getting involved in this matter is quite dangerous, because he could be killed by the head nurse. However, if he is interested in any clues, he can climb to the roof of the hospital. Watching the old man interfere with the Mautai's antibiotics, Jake questions him about the women's screams coming from the street at night. Following the system prompt, the hero invites the patient from Ward 404 to drink strong alcohol. Mystery says this patient is sitting in the women's restroom across the street. While taking the money, Jake remembers that for today's task he needs to find a patient from Ward 404, about whom he asks the victim. The tormented Mystery asks the hero to let her go, offering money in return. Taking out his scissors, the guy began to demand the patient to return the life of their classmate, because, according to him, cremation is expensive now. When Jake saw a hand holding 3 different colored cards under the cubicle door, he knocked down the door, throwing the stunned secret to the floor. Trusting his friend, the main character promised to solve this problem and went to wait for the secret in the restroom. Bart told Jake that his classmate was killed by a mysterious mystery in the toilet, asking him to choose one of 3 cards. Suddenly, his classmate Bart approaches the hero and asks him to help him deal with a very curious situation. Realizing that this case is connected with the head nurse, the guy decides to finish the tasks for today in order to later go in search of clues. The patient is terrified, and she urges Jake to ignore this matter, otherwise the head nurse will kill them all. The hero meets the vampire again and, pointing to the woman's cry, asks her if she knows what happened. But instead of putting the remaining space in the flashlight to good use, he decides to simply sleep until the next morning. The guy immediately realized that in order to advance the progress of this task, he needed to find the screaming woman. Outside the window, he hears a woman scream and a prompt appears in front of him, showing the progress of a special task. Reacting quickly, Jake shines his flashlight on the mystery, instantly incinerating it with magical light. When the noise died down and the main character thought that the danger had passed, he was attacked by a secret that had sneaked into his room. Many secrets awaited him behind this door, and each of them wanted to tear him apart. Behind the door, the voice of his classmate is heard, who asks the guy to save him from the impending danger, but Jake decides not to open the door, since he does not know for sure who is behind it. Looking through the door peephole, he sees an eye looking straight at him. Suddenly the hero hears a noise coming from outside the door of his room and decides to check what is there. As it turns out, the flashlight needed for this task only works for 3 hours from the moment it is turned on. At night, Jake gets out of bed to begin a special mission and discovers that the hospital looks completely different than it does in daylight. Noticing that everyone in the secret world is pursuing their own interests, he refuses to cooperate with Harry, because, in his opinion, he has never been a good person. He reflects on the importance of passing this test, and is also concerned about a special task, because upon completion, his chances of entering a prestigious university greatly increase. The quest, the sad cry of a bloody night, makes the guy think that he will somehow have to leave his room at night. Sitting in his room, the hero examines the flashlight and becomes better acquainted with the special task. Jake realizes that Harry is doing all this only in order to take money from the others in the future, so he refuses to cooperate. The president shows the sword he acquired during his work and unites his classmates under his leadership. He says that they have already lost most of their friends, and if they do not unite, then their chances of success will be very low. The classmates' conversations are interrupted by class president Harry, who comes out to speak to the crowd. His classmates are shocked that he achieved such success in his work without even preparing for the test, and they wonder how he managed it. The head nurse praises our guy for his work and gives him payment for the day. The discouraged secret accuses the hero of cheating, to which he replies that all villains are usually ruined by excessive talkativeness. Mystery realizes that her rival is not so stupid and says that she will allow him to become her prey, but at that moment Jake plunges the scissors into her throat. At this moment, the secret tears off its disguise, showing the guy its true essence. The main character says that there should be a mole on his classmate's chest, which this girl does not have, and he advises her to be more professional in the future. However, Jake, without hesitation, hits the girl in the face, causing her to fall to the floor. The guy's thoughts about this task are interrupted by Lilith running towards him and begging him for help. This flashlight was clearly there for a reason, especially for such a large sum, so the hero bought it, thereby unlocking a special task. Taking the money, Jake began to buy food from the vending machine, again noticing the expensive flashlight. In gratitude, the vampire gave the guy money so that in the future he could bring her more of her favorite drink. The patient really liked the cocktail the nurse made, and she drank it in one gulp, which frightened the hero. This patient turned out to be a vampire, to whom Jake brought a cocktail according to the recipe from the tip, from expensive coffee, jasmine and glass crumbs. Approaching the room, a system window opened in front of the guy, again helping him cope with the mysterious patient. It turned out that no one had seen this patient in person, but they said that he often aided his medical staff. This time, Jake had to take medicine to a patient from a room he had never been to before, so he decided to ask other patients about the new secret. Reporting that 5 students had died overnight, she distributed new instructions to the remaining students. Lilith continued to beg the hero, but at that moment the head nurse entered the hall. She noticed that among all the classmates who were kept awake by secrets, Jake looked the most cheerful and thought that he had found a solution to the problem. When the guy goes down to the hall, his classmate Lilith turns to him with a request to lend her money for food. At night, a secret sneaks up on him, which he does not notice due to extremely sound sleep. Having failed to get inside the prison, the hero decides to continue sleeping. In his dream, Jake sees the heavenly prison, which has repeatedly appeared to him in his dreams. He also notices a rather expensive flashlight in the vending machine, but at first he doesn't attach much importance to it and decides to go to bed in order to have time to rest for the next morning's preparations. Jake spent part of his salary on food and water, which is an expensive luxury here. Ordering everyone to go to sleep in the waiting areas on their floors, she also indicated that everyone should sleep at night, and no one should open their eyes, no matter what happened. Afterwards, the head nurse handed out envelopes with money to all students and reminded them that there are vending machines on each floor where they can buy food and drinks. As it turned out, this student did a poor job and received many complaints from patients. But when he approached her, she took off his head with one blow. One of the students approached the nurse to compliment her work. When our hero reached the hall, the head nurse came out to the students. By the end of the day, many students had gathered in the hall, each talking with horror about their patients, doubting that they would survive to the end of the test. Jake immediately summons his weapon and drives it into the baby's mouth, reminding him that interrupting people is rude. The hero, despite the threats, begins to tell a fairy tale, but the baby does not like it, which is why he threatens to kill the hero. Jake behaves quite calmly, which puzzles the baby. The guy calms the baby and wants to tell him a fairy tale, but he says that if he doesn't like the fairy tale, when a nurse picks up a baby, a tooltip appears next to the baby, which states that if patients are eaten by off-duty nurses, the head nurse will not do anything to them. Jake wonders why they couldn't solve this problem themselves, to which he is reminded that that's what he's at the hospital for. Another patient from the same ward explains that she asks the hero to calm a crying baby who was lying in the same ward. Frightened, the guy asks what happened while the mystery was pointing its finger deep into the chamber. With a furious cry, the mystery rushes at him with a severely distorted face. The main character carefully enters the room, asking who called the nurse. As soon as Jake approached the room, a system prompt appeared in front of him. However, nothing was written on it. Suddenly, an alert is heard from the speakers that a nurse is needed in the next room. The main character offered to return the girl's head to its place, but she, overcome with fear, refused and began to collect pieces of her head on her own. A new hint told him that now they would not contradict him. Then Jake decided to cut her head into pieces, which greatly frightened the rest of the secrets in the ward. Suddenly a clue appeared that hinted that this secret would kill him as soon as the scissors were put away. When it turned out that the patient was a headless girl, he apologized and decided to take the scissors out of her head. Jake introduced himself and asked a patient who needed special care to stand. As it turned out, they wanted to play a joke on their nurse, but his scissors alerted them. he sees before him the discouraged secrets that will be his patients. Summoning his weapon, he bursts into the chamber and stabs the scissors into the head flying at him. Before entering, the guy studies the system prompt, which states that he should not lose face in front of his patients, and that a human head will fly at the entrance. Upon arrival, he discovers a huge amount of blood on the door and walls, which makes him nervous. On the way to the required chambers, the hero studies the notebook with tasks, rejoicing that instead of the entire floor, he will only need to look after 4 chambers. Jake asks the head nurse if anyone else has come besides him, but she coolly replies that he will find out during work. She gives him an assignment for the night, mentioning that one of the patients needs special care, and then tells him to come to the same place in the morning to collect his salary. Almost immediately upon arrival at the hospital, he is greeted by the head nurse. Full of confidence from the protagonist aura, Jake headed towards the hospital. The reward was Catherine's scissors, which the guy wanted to sell for a large amount of points, but could not do this, since they were tied to him. After this, a system panel appeared in front of the main character, which congratulated him on completing the secret mission and presented him with a reward. Jumping out of the guy's arms, she said her name, Catherine, and promised that he wouldn't just get away with it, and then ran away. Jake, in turn, was excited by the sweetish taste of her lips. From such actions the secret was discouraged and greatly embarrassed. Realizing that she does not believe the words, the main character kisses the woman. Not understanding what he is trying to achieve, the mystery interrupts him. Remembering the clue that this woman needed just a little love and care, he said that true love comes only once. Suddenly Jake took her in his arms, which immediately discouraged the woman. The stranger's excessive arrogance and confidence infuriated the mystery, which made her rush towards him to end his life. Rejoicing at this chance, the guy begins to provoke the woman, but, unfortunately for him, the system window disappears, leaving him practically unarmed. Suddenly, her attack is blocked by a system prompt that hints to the main character on how to defeat this mystery. Pushing Jake into a dead end, she repeated her question again and again, and then attacked him with her weapon. But the woman with the slit mouth did not lag behind and continued to ask him if she was beautiful. He couldn't think of anything better than to pretend to be a fool and just run away. Jake tried to calm down and remember what they talked about this secret in class and how to deal with it, but he forgot everything they went through in school. This secret was a woman with a slit mouth who constantly asked if she was beautiful. But unfortunately for him, at the very beginning of his journey he stumbles upon a secret. The guy saw the hospital he needed to go to continue the test. The main character suggests that this is a strength bonus for the handsome guys. After moving to the secret world, Jake opens a character information panel, where he notices that his strength indicator is 50 instead of the required 10. After the countdown, she presses the button on the container containing the Stone of Cunning, teleporting all the students in the class. The teacher encourages his students, reminding them that they must leave when they have no resurrections left. One day, one of the visitors to the secret world concluded a contract in it and brought the Stone of Cunning to the real world in order to avoid accidentally dragging people in the future. Each secret is assigned a rank, and the higher it is, the more dangerous the secret is considered. The secret world was full of beings endowed with their own consciousness, which were called secrets. The world in which he is now differs from the past in that there is a secret world inside it, which pulled in people from the real world. Our main character's name is Jake, who is a time traveler moving between worlds. Suddenly, the animated conversations of classmates are interrupted by a teacher entering the classroom, causing everyone to take their seats. Their desk neighbor jokes that appearance alone will not be enough for the test, hinting not to count on help. A classmate, excited about the upcoming event, wakes up the main character, hoping that he will help him. The story begins in a classroom full of excited students. On the way home, the sister told the hero how worried she was about him, especially after the news that many people from his class had died during the test, and asked him not to return to the secret world again, because the hero would not have done that with his grades not to any university, but she had already found him a suitable job. Approaching Jake, she gently ruffled his hair and said that his favorite dish was waiting for him at home. It was his sister, who had already tried to shout to the pensive hero. The guy's reasoning was interrupted by the ringing call of a voice well known to him. But the hero also noticed that the school, although it forced participation in the test, did not take away the participants' right to leave the secret world immediately after it began. So if someone really did not want to participate, they would immediately go out into the real world. Margaret asked Jake if he sympathized with these people, to which he replied that he did, because this was the real world, real life. Turning around again, the hero saw Lilith's furious, but also heartbroken father, who heartrendingly demanded that his daughter be returned to him. When the guy turned towards the crying, he saw Harry's mother, who was overwhelmed with grief and quietly sobbed from her loss. Their short conversation was interrupted by the sorrowful crying of one of the women. In response to this, the hero became very embarrassed, explaining that in the real world they cannot just kill whoever they want, and was surprised how such a beautiful girl constantly wants to kill. Jake had just left school when Margaret immediately said with caution that trouble should be expected from Eve and offered to kill her. Horrified and filled with hope, people listened to the long list of names of students who died in the test, hoping not to hear the name of their child in it. A couple of hours later, a crowd of adults gathered outside the school, waiting for their children to return from the secret world. Eve says that she and Jake are most likely the only students who have entered into contracts with secrets, so it would be nice for them to get to know each other better, for which she asks Jake for his contact information. Margaret is jealous that she received nothing in return and draws the hero's attention to how well she treats him. While listening to Eve, Jake asks his secret if she knows what they are talking about, and she reveals that when entering into a contract, people are usually at an extreme disadvantage and there are practically no equal contracts. When the hero asked her about it, she wanted to know if he killed Harry and Lilith in the secret world, and told her not to pretend that he had no idea what she was talking about, because she had to sacrifice 13 people to the spirit. Suddenly, Eve asked how many items his spirit demanded in order to conclude the contract. Surprised by this question, Margaret says that after concluding contracts, subordinate spirits can interact with each other. Then Jake was indignant at why she did not tell him about such an important thing earlier. Trying to get out of an embarrassing situation, the hero mentally asks Margaret how Eve knows about her existence. Her words were so unexpected that the guy was embarrassed for a minute, and an awkward silence ensued. But suddenly for Jake, the girl hinted that she knew about his contract with the headless spirit. Having decided not to tell anyone about the contract with Margaret for now, the guy denies it, saying that he cannot compare with Eve, because she entered into a contract with a secret. The young man and the girl went out into the corridor, where Eve congratulated him on passing the test and especially the nightmare regime. But then their bewilderment gave way to satisfied grimaces, as soon as Jake thought that he had activated the main character's aura, and suddenly this beauty fell in love with him. At first, both the director and the hero froze in bewilderment, because it was unknown why the most popular girl in school needed him. The famous and beloved Eva wanted to talk to the guy about something. Suddenly a familiar voice from the doorway calls out to Jake. The director immediately threw the mug away, ordering the teacher to take it away, because it could harm the guy's hands, to which she exclaimed that the director himself was to blame, because he had not cooled the tea in advance. However, Jake stopped him, saying that he was not shy at all, because he was more worried about the mug of hot tea burning his hand. As soon as the guy wanted to say something, the director immediately interrupted him, saying that he did not need to be shy, because he was now the ray of hope of this school. Suddenly, the teachers rushed to the hero, asking him if everything was okay with him. The director handed him a mug of hot tea so that he could properly relax. Bart did not doubt the strength of his comrade, and therefore enthusiastically called out to the hero, while other classmates were racking their brains, trying to understand how such a lazy person as Jake could complete the test, also in a nightmare mode. Such an unexpected outcome shocks everyone in the class, except for one single person. Their conversation is interrupted when the main character returns to the real world. Meanwhile, the school administration, puzzled by the situation, is talking in the classroom. Mystery considered each of the points so humiliating that she would rather accept death than submit to a person on such terms, and was about to break the contract, but noticed that one of the points was Jake's promise as the owner to help return her head. Margaret read one of the lines, wondering how the guy decided to write such a thing, but the confident grin did not leave the hero's face. The secret was not happy with what she read, and every clause of the contract she read infuriated her, while Jake, with a smug look, awaited her decision. Out of despair, Margaret picks up a scroll of contract from the floor to find out under what conditions he plans to subjugate her. Here the hero's expression became cold and his eyes empty, and he says that if she refuses, death awaits her. Remaining calm and confident, Jake reveals the contract to Margaret, offering to become his subordinate spirit. Jake makes it clear to her that she is in no position to try to outsmart him, after which a contract scroll materializes in his hand. Unexpectedly for her, the links of the chains began to break, evaporating one after another. Wanting to teach a lesson to the unexpected guest, the spirit created many magical chains with which she wanted to shackle the hero in an instant. Despite the hero's friendliness, Margaret makes it clear to him that she is not in the mood to obey any person. After reading the system prompt, Jake extended his hand to the girl, promising that if she came with him, he would help her find her head. Shrouded in an ominous aura, the mystery slowly began to approach the guy. Then the hero comes up with the idea to invite her to take a walk away from the thick walls of the tower, from which the tension subsides, and Margaret, shuddering for a moment, seems to come to life. One by one, Jake went through the options to somehow get along with the spirit, but nothing that came to his mind suited him. Making an arrogant grimace, the guy tries to suck up to the spirit by offering various foods, but this only intensifies the pressure. Stunned by the power of the aura, Jake wonders what level of mystery this is, because its pressure feels almost like the pressure of the head nurse. The system introduces the hero to a headless dark spirit named Margaret, whose sympathy level is 0, and also gives instructions that increasing the sympathy level will allow the hero to better control her, and subsequently take over some of her abilities. Just when Jake was glad that he met another beauty on his way, he notices that this girl has no head, which greatly depressed him. Finally he meets a girl shackled, who was the source of energy. Deciding to check where it is coming from, he goes floor by floor, passing the depressing paraphernalia of a prison. A previously unknown aura hovering in the depths of the tower distracts the guy. When a spider hanging on a long string of web matches the hero's head, he is indignant that this place is too ugly. Jake then realizes that the tower is a real place and feels that everything in the prison is now under his control. Images of different corners of the tower appear in his mind, each of which he can fully experience, as if he were already there. Suddenly the hero is surrounded by a bright light, enveloping his consciousness. In the center of the tower, near the old spiral staircase, Jake is greeted by a system window, calling him a slave. Going inside, the guy is surprised that this time he was able to go further, because many times he had to stay outside the tower. A huge steel fence slowly rises higher and higher, allowing the hero to reach the main gate of the tower. Jake, meanwhile, is transported to the sky prison, which so often appeared to him in his dreams. The others wonder why the survivor hasn't returned yet if the ordeal is already over. The principal interrupts their argument, saying that it is not so important who the winner turns out to be. What is more important is that he will be the pride of their school. Unexpectedly for everyone, Bart assumes that the main character will be the surviving student, to which he is told that since the class president died, then lazy Jake had no chance of survival at all. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the director notices that out of 3 students, only 1 survived. Bart replied that he was sure, otherwise he would not have been able to leave the secret world beforehand, and pointed out that the last time he saw Lilith, Harry, and Jake. The school principal asked Bart, who was sitting in class, if he was sure that when he left, the nightmare regime had begun. Meanwhile, in the classroom to which the students were supposed to return, only a couple of people remained alive. Just when Jake was happy with his rewards and thought that he would return to the real world, the window began to show interference upon his return and he was transported to an unknown space. System windows appeared one after another, showing items received for tasks and improved characteristics of the hero. Then the hero takes out small shoes from his jacket pocket, which he was going to give to Sophia so that she would not run barefoot, but, unfortunately, he will no longer have this opportunity. A window appears in front of the guy, indicating the completion of the test and the opportunity to receive rewards for completing it. He understands that only man himself can grant himself a sense of redemption, watching as the red sky turns blue, and the once bloodthirsty secret tearfully crumbles in the wind. Exhausted from what is happening, Jake sits down at the edge of the roof to finally rest. It finally dawns on the head nurse that she hasn't been truly happy all this time. Sophia asks the nurse to give them a good rest this time from all their troubles, and then slowly disappears. The girl hugs the silent secret, saying that she doesn't want to see her suffer. Sophia says she understands how unhappy the head nurse is because she feels the same way. In response to the nurse's cries that those people did not pay enough for their sins, Sophia clarifies that she is not talking about doctors and patients, but about her and the nurse. She says that all those who hurt the nurse were indeed cursed, but it is all over. The nurse's path is immediately blocked by Sophia, who begs her to stop. Tired of everything that is going on around him and grinning at the stupidity of his victims, the nurse decides to end them once and for all. Suddenly the president's head falls to the ground and, not understanding why the nurse is still alive, Harry dies. Harry is sure that by killing the girl, he will get rid of the head nurse and thereby pass the test, receiving the long-awaited prize. Suddenly, Harry stabs Sophia with his sword, causing her to fall to the floor and begin to cry. When the nurse decides to end things with the students, Jake speaks up that they still can't defeat her, so he takes Sophia hostage, because she and the nurse are connected, and she shouldn't get hurt. The head nurse says that it doesn't matter now because she solved the problem without anyone's help, and that she doesn't need other people's compassion. Trying to reach the nurse's feelings, the main character asks her if she really wants to stay with this curse forever. Jake says that at first he thought that Sophia was the daughter of the head nurse, but then he realized that the other secrets were not without reason afraid of such a small and fragile girl. And Sophia is a confirmation of his words, as a part of the personality that the nurse deliberately separated from herself and locked away. He says that in the depths of her soul, the nurse still retained grains of kindness that she once gave to patients. Jake agrees that all these people deserve their punishment, which stupefies the taken-aback nurse. Maddened by the flood of memories, the head nurse began to scream that everyone who died at her hands deserved it, and that's why she chopped everyone into pieces. The hero sympathizes with the head nurse, saying that worse than her colleagues insulting her was the loss of trust among the hospital patients. Summarizing his story, Jake says that the heroine of this story was the head nurse Sophia. In order to hush up this story, the mentor decided to promote the heroine to head nurse, which caused rumors throughout the hospital that she voluntarily decided to get a new position through her bed, but when she tried to convey the opposite to people, no one believed her. But her efforts were unsuccessful, and she also became a victim of her mentor. Completely forgetting why she came, the nurse rushed at her mentor, trying to save the poor patient. She saw her mentor molesting one of his patients, but one day she encountered something truly terrible. Over time, she was able to achieve her goal, and through her hard work and caring, she earned the trust of many patients. Remembering a diary found in the morgue, he talks about a small but very smart girl who once wanted to become a nurse in order to help people. Before attacking, Jake asks her to listen to a story. The hero realizes that they cannot overcome such a powerful secret, and since they can no longer hide, he asks the head nurse for a favor. Jake sensed the strong aura emanating from the secret and covered Sophia with his arms, protecting her from the impending danger. The head nurse caught up with them again, but this time they had nowhere to run. The ringing clatter of heels interrupted their conversation and, turning around, Harry was horrified again. The hero apologizes, saying that they won't play this time, but he wants to tell Sophia something. Very happy, she hugs Jake, asking if he came to play with her. Having walked the stairs to the very end, the hero opens the door leading to the roof, where he again meets Sophia. Overtaking the president, Jake agrees that people make choices only to please themselves and then they themselves are faced with the results of their choice. She told Jake about Harry's family and hoped to pass the test to help his family. The main character asks the president if he knows that Lilith was going to invite them to dinner if they all survived. After catching his breath, Jake says that Harry needs to stop pretending that he has the hardest life and that he doesn't have to make excuses for him. Harry yells at the main character that he cannot sit back and watch the people closest to him die in front of his eyes, so he must do everything to save his father. Overwhelmed by emotions, the president says that his father is terminally ill, his own mother abandoned him, and his beloved grandfather, unable to bear such grief, died. Feeling guilty for what he did, Harry begins to make excuses to the main character, saying that he himself would have done the same. After running many floors in search of salvation, Jake and Harry stop to catch their breath. Having finished with her victim, the nurse raises her terrifying gaze after the fleeing guys. Realizing that he can't help her now, Jake runs away. Just as she opened the system window and thought to escape, the head nurse pierces her helpless body with her knife, delivering blow after blow. Jake screams with all his might for Lilith to return to the real world. After all the encouraging speeches and promises, she couldn't believe that Harry would just run away, leaving her to fend for herself. Sensing something was wrong and seeing Harry running by, Jake turned to his classmate. Shocked by fear, pain and bewilderment, Lilith continued to call out to the figure of the class president moving away in the corridor. Harry, unable to contain his fear, rushed to run away from this room, leaving only a horrified look at his classmate. When she first decided to run, the head nurse cut off her legs with her knife. Jake called out to Lilith to follow him, but she froze in horror and did not want to leave her classmate. Harry shouts that there is no time to think and demands to be left alone before he changes his mind. Lilith, overcome with horror, does not want to leave the class president to be torn apart by the mystery. Harry, grabbing his sword, heroically stands between the head nurse and his classmates, shouting that they must leave. Having met the eyes of the students, holding a bloody knife in her hand, she begins to move closer and closer to them. With a strong blow from her inhuman hands, she smashes the closed door of the chamber into small pieces. The head nurse knew that her victims were inside, and when she received no answer, she flew into a rage. She said that spending the night together was prohibited and everyone should be in their own rooms, but none of the students dared even go to the door. It was the head nurse who demanded that they open the door for her. However, his words are interrupted by a loud knock on the door of the chamber. Hoping to boost his friend's morale, Harry says that together they have a better chance of survival. Preparing for the start, classmates decided to stick together and lock themselves in one of the rooms. It's approaching midnight, and soon, exactly at midnight, the killer will go hunting. At this time, in the morgue, the head nurse rejoices at the nightmare regime that she has been waiting for so long. The guy reluctantly agrees, saying that he will not be guilty if they are suddenly killed. Having ignored the main character's lectures, his classmates try to persuade him to help them pass the test. Surprised by his classmates' decision to stay, Jake tries to convince them by citing the proverb that life only comes once, and if they lose it now, there won't be another chance. After saying goodbye and wishing his classmates good luck, Bart returns to the real world. Even while admiring Harry's fighting spirit, Bart does not want to remain in the secret world, saying that his life is dear to him. But the class president is already well aware of the riskiness of his decision and promises, upon his return, to reimburse his classmates for the money that he took from them earlier. Doubting, Harry reminds that the reward for completing the regime will be even greater, to which Bart says that he has gone crazy and agrees with the main character that staying in the secret world without resurrections is suicide. His classmates looked at Jake excitedly. Not everyone liked his proposal. The guy says that in the morgue he met with the head nurse, and, reminding him that the nightmare regime is very dangerous for beginners, suggested that those who had no resurrections left should return to the real world. Lilith says that they saw on the monitors that Jake went to the morgue and asks if everything is fine with him. Surprised by this reception, the main character asks what they are doing in the hall. Taking the elevator to the first floor, Jake meets Lilith, Harry, and Bart waiting for him at the elevator. To his surprise, the head nurse did not pursue him, allowing him to hide deeper into the hospital. When she asked what the guy was doing in the morgue, he decided not to waste time on explanations and just run away. Distracted by his thoughts, the guy does not notice how the head nurse comes into the morgue. Everyone except Jake, who rejoices at the opportunity to get more rewards for completing an event that happens once every 100 years. A system warning appears in front of all the students about the activation of nightmare mode, which undoubtedly scares everyone. After reading the diary, the progress of the task increases to 99%, which annoys the main character, who wanted to end the test as quickly as possible. Having read the diary to the end, he learns the dramatic story of a nurse who suffered at the hands of her beloved teacher, which none of her colleagues believed in, so the nurse vowed to kill everyone who did not believe her. Passing by the table, the main character notices a diary and a small stack of old photographs. Upon arrival at the morgue, the guy examines the room, recognizing his classmates in some of the corpses. Taking this opportunity, Jake exits the elevator in search of the head nurse's room. Here a dispute ensues between the mysteries, since everyone had to endure it in order to eat it in the future. Tired of the eternal chatter of the main character, the first patient breaks down and intends to eat him. On the floor below, our altruist helps an old woman, for which she warmly thanks him at first, but then becomes embarrassed when she sees 3 more different spirits in the elevator. On the next floor, Jake helps another mystery in a wheelchair, then also asks a tactless question about how she washes herself. In the elevator, the guy asks the dead man if he washes his brain-damaged head, which confuses both the dead man and the mystery traveling with them. Jake stopped the elevator doors, explaining that this dead guy just wanted to ride the elevator. Wondering why the mystery was so afraid, the main character saw a dead man rushing straight towards their elevator. Arriving at the minus floor, the patient became nervous and tried to quickly close the elevator doors. Mystery wanted to scare Jake by showing him the bracelet that the head nurse usually hangs on the hands of walking corpses, but the guy steals it unnoticed. She tells the main character that this hospital has existed for hundreds of years, and unidentified bodies are lowered into the morgue, which periodically come out to take a walk. The patient considers the guy abnormal, because even she, being a secret, is afraid of the ghosts there. In the elevator, Jake meets another patient who asks him if he is going to the morgue, to which he replies in the affirmative. In exchange for help, Harry told our hero that the head nurse was resting on the 4th floor, where there was only one elevator in the entire hospital. Jake told his patients about the secret, who was familiar with the head nurse, and they all gathered together to teach him a lesson with their own hands. Having heard another possible clue, the main character nevertheless agreed to help his classmate. Eva offers 200,000 euros, but the guy replies that he will never give up the lead. Jake says he's not that kind of person and everyone gets leads because of their abilities, but by using money she insults him. Suddenly he tells him in the back that he will buy a lead for $100,000. He began to leave dissatisfied, feeling like a loser, and the girl looked after him. Under pressure from the girl, the guy says that he received the task, and now they need to go back and sleep. And whether he unlocked the task, Jake is surprised that he was quickly figured out. The girl realizes that this was a stupid excuse and asks the guy if he found a clue. She asks why he didn't run away with her, to which he replies that he chickened out and ran to the restroom. Eva approached him and handed him a handkerchief, asking if the guy was okay. Jake says it was much more exciting than the amusement rides. Mystery shook her hands and said that they had finished the descent. The guy vomited. Moments later, Margaret landed successfully without being injured. The guy was very scared, and he screamed at the top of his lungs. Turning around, she saw Jake quickly falling to the ground, and secrets were flying behind him. By this time, Eva had managed to run out of the building and turned around at the screams that she suddenly heard. She tells the guy to hold on to her tightly. The guy in fear reminds the mystery that if you jump from such a height, you can break. Margaret ran to the window, grabbing the guy by the collar, saying that there was no time left. Secrets were already creeping through the door and it was becoming difficult to contain them. Immediately the guy received a hint and a new task. He was very surprised that she didn't leave anything behind, but simply gave the task. Suddenly the girl turned into butterflies that flew through the window into the sky. The guy asked to be patient a little longer. He quickly grabbed the girl's hand and asked his sister to go with him. Margaret hurried him to finish as quickly as possible, since the number of secrets behind the door was tens of thousands and if they got here, they would drown them. Jake didn't understand who was a ghost or an NPC in front of him, but her appearance was much different from ordinary girls. The girl turned around with tears in her eyes. The suddenly appeared couple heard her monologue about the loss of her lover and about their love, capable of conquering mountains and seas. Because in front of him he saw a girl in a blue dress and loose hair, who was looking out the window. She didn't want to die with him and told him to look for a way out, but the guy was silent. Margaret got angry with the guy because she wanted to protect him, but he didn't appreciate it, since what had been started could not be stopped, and he did not want his strength to be wasted. But the guy grabbed her hand and broke into the closed room. Secrets gathered in a huge pile, and Margaret was ready to fight them back. But as soon as they approached the last room, they appeared, preventing them from going there. Jake understood that the secrets here were not revealed from the very beginning, which means they did not want to set a trap. Margaret says that she will transform into physical form for a short time and delay these secrets, and he should quickly run away. They crawled out of all the rooms and filled the entire floor. Suddenly the door opened and spirits appeared in the form of hands. The guy tried to stop the girl, but she quickly ran away. Margaret appeared, who was pleased that she was right. Eve immediately realized that it was a trap and they needed to escape from here. The lamps turned red and all the doors on the floor began to break down from the inside. Suddenly a girl with long hair and a smile on her face appears. This was strange since this was the last room and there was nothing else to check. Suddenly they hear that the door is locked and could not be opened. There was not a single clue in the dilapidated building, as if the key to the solution had been deliberately hidden. The young man also noticed this, since it was suspiciously clean here. As soon as they got up, Margaret appeared and warned the guy, saying that she felt that something was wrong on this floor. Jake was already tired of looking around this building, but fortunately they were climbing to the last 6th floor. They examined each floor for a long time, but found nothing. The girl says that there is nothing on the 1st floor and offers to go higher. Jake decided that instead of keeping his distance from Eve, it would be better to watch her and see what she was up to. They entered the offices and examined the cabinets and books scattered around the room. The guy felt that Eva came up to him for a reason and that she did not have pure intentions. The girl sighed and agreed, then they decided to go together and look after each other. Jake replies that in horror movies, when the team gets separated, something always happens. Eva says that the building has 6 floors and suggests splitting up. The guy and girl entered it without hesitation and looked around. The building was in poor condition, dirty with broken windows and mice running everywhere. It's just that if there were problems with the old hostel building, then the scale of the mystery inside is unimaginable. Jake thought that since he got here because of Margaret, he couldn't leave empty-handed and the key to the solution was hidden right there. Margaret is angry that the guy did not listen to her. She says that he will have problems. The girl tells him to follow her since she found out the location of the old hostel. Jake replies that it makes sense, and he agrees to go with Eve. Margaret tells the guy that the girl has some purpose and he should stay away from her. Eva says that she dealt with the commandant and he won't wake up until the morning. She invites the guy to go to the old hostel and see what's there. The guy noticed that the girl left the commandant's room and asked what she was doing there. Jake says that she's not sleeping either and maybe he scared everyone here with his scream. Suddenly Eva appeared behind him and asked why he was not sleeping either. The guy did not expect such a turn of events. When night fell, the guy left his room, because if the commandant found out, he would have problems. She doesn't understand and asks what the main thing he needs to finish is. The young man tells her to calm down, and he will definitely fulfill his promise, but first he needs to complete the main task. Jake says that she treated him rudely recently, but the spirit retorted that they had no need to argue and should go. The guy asks what's good about leaving the room, to which she replies that they need to look for her beautiful head. Margaret invites the guy to go out for a walk, since he also received an official pass that allowed him to leave and enter the hostel whenever he wanted. Opening the funeral urn in his inventory gave him a model magazine, but he didn't need it since his neighbor was a girl. Each level up gave an additional 5 arcane power points, and with bonuses, Jake had 105 arcane power points. Finally the guy replied that he couldn't force dear Margaret to deal with someone of F level. Having opened the box, the guy was very surprised by the number of goodies, since he could not eat in the canteen. But the young man did not pay attention to her, but was looking for the box that was written about in the note. Because of this Margaret was upset, since he ignored him. She replies that she lied to him earlier because he won't grow if she solves all his problems. Jake says that she didn't have the strength and how she's going to deal with the spirit then. Suddenly Margaret appears and says that it was an insignificant level F and asks the guy if he wants to play with her. When that strange guy left, Jake saw a note on the nightstand. In it the neighbor greeted him, said that there were a lot of snacks in the nightstand for him and if he wanted to see her, he should find her. There are very few places in the building, so they had to mix girls and boys. Secondly, it is strictly forbidden to enter the old dormitory. After 9 in the evening the lights in the hostel are turned off and therefore you cannot walk after this time. He saw a guy who greeted him and began to tell him the rules of the hostel. Suddenly he felt a presence behind him. He was very glad that at least in the secret world he could fulfill his dream of living with a cute girl. The guy entered the room assigned to him and saw a pink bed with women's things scattered on it. That's how it was. After some time they were assigned to dormitories. Jake asks her in surprise if boys and girls live together at this school. Eva says that there is no need for this yet, since there is not much information, but when they are assigned to the dorm, if they end up in the same room, they can take care of each other. Adrian agrees and says that this is the only way they can achieve maximum efficiency. Anthony guessed that there were 5 of them in this scenario, so he suggested exchanging information just in case. Jake also complained that if you can't answer, you immediately break your hands and these teaching methods were strange. Daniel cried because from the very beginning he lost the opportunity to be resurrected. Adrian also said that it was not so quiet in their class. They also interacted with each other, shared food, and ate food that was quite strange for humans, but not for monsters. After the lesson, it was time for lunch and a lot of people gathered in the school cafeteria. Jake, sitting in his seat, thought that this secret world was too modern since they knew everything and he wondered if they had TikTok too. The man hoped that everyone would listen to him carefully and if he taught poorly, the school council would punish him. He asked everyone to try and open their textbooks. When the new students finished introducing themselves, the lesson began and since the director cut out the tongue of the previous English teacher and she needs rest, today he will teach a lesson. The guy was very worried and didn't know what to answer, but in the end he said that he likes to eat garbage. The teacher stood up and laughed, saying that it wasn't a bad introduction and she could take her seat, after which he asks Daniel to introduce himself again. She introduced herself and said that she turned 6 this year. Her best success was at 3 years old, then she punched a nursing home and kicked a kindergarten. She added that it was better for no one to get along with her, otherwise they would die. Eve suddenly slammed the teacher's head on the table with a straight face. The teacher asked the guys to be quiet and return to their seats, and now the girl could also introduce herself. The guy walked to his seat and thought he was very smart, but the surprised teacher stopped him, saying that this was enough and although he wanted to continue watching, he could not allow the director to reprimand him because of this and the guy could get dressed and sit down in his place. The guy decided to go even further and started taking off his pants, telling everyone to scream and not stop. The newcomers who came with Jake looked at this spectacle in bewilderment. This time the whole class stood up and shouted that Jake was cool. Finally he took off his shirt and repeated it again. In response, more people have already chimed in and said he's cool. Then he took off his t-shirt and repeated his nickname. The guys were at a loss, but one person picked it up and hesitantly said Jake is cool. So he took off his jacket and shouted his name. He was from an ordinary family, dad drives a Ferrari, mom drives a Bentley, and he was just joking. But all this doesn't matter, since his loved ones call him Jake, but for his new classmates he's cool. He was able to do this. He introduced himself as Jake, who is 18 years old, who since childhood has been able to breathe on his own, eat 3 times a day, talk and use a smartphone perfectly. Suddenly a hint emerged of how the teacher felt. He had a boring life, a repetitive job, and he hoped that among the newcomers there would be at least one funny person. The guy was angry because he understood that she was doing this on purpose. The young man turns to Margaret and tells her that it is time to show her strength and she must cut this thing. But she replies that she spent all her strength controlling his body and now she needs to rest and recover. Blood got on Jake, and he was discouraged. Although he knew that this could happen, he did not understand why everyone liked to hit him on the head so much. The teacher laughed and hit the guy on the head while he was not looking and it exploded. Jake didn't believe that it would be so easy, since it couldn't all end like that and there had to be some kind of trap. He turns to the teacher and adds that he has finished the performance, to which he says that since he has finished, he can sit down. Daniel says he is 18 years old and likes to sing, rap, and play basketball, and usually likes to eat chicken. The young man began to sweat and looked at the already seated students, who were looking at him in response with coldness in their eyes. The teacher told the newcomers to come in and introduce themselves to everyone. The black-haired one was supposed to be the first. The guy was surprised that he was the first. The task was to attend the final exam at the Broken Bones High School in 5 days. They were given 5 days to complete the task and they could not refuse to participate in the first 2 days. Since the new students stood at the entrance for a long time, the teacher invited them to enter the classroom. So, the first advice was to improve relations with the teacher and students, since they entered later. The second advice: at school you need to listen to the teacher, otherwise he will be very angry. Jake really didn't want to and was already crying from the inability to step back. But the countdown had already begun and they sincerely wanted to successfully complete the test. Well, they had to get down to business, and they entered the secret world. Bernard was glad for the remaining students and was proud of them. As a reward, each was given a prize of 200,000 yuan, and the school director would soon have to give the money to their guardians. The guy sweated and was angry that all these nuances were not mentioned in the textbooks and those who wrote these textbooks were incompetent. She replies that if the contract spirit dies, then the contract worker will at best go crazy, or there will be involuntary excrement of bowel movements, or he will be paralyzed and this could even lead to his death. She asks if he knew about this. Margaret says that he was the first to agree to find her head, and signing the contract does not count. The guy replies that whether she believes it or not, when they return to the heavenly prison, he will finish her off. The young man shouts indignantly that in this case she also cannot control his body, since he is her master. She tells him that he promised her to find the head, and he will not be able to find it unless he returns to the secret world. She added that she will not tolerate deception. Jake asks Margaret to let him go since he didn't want to participate since it's only been a few days since the last challenge and he hasn't had enough fun yet and she wanted him to go to the secret world again. Some of the guys were angry that after a few days the test started again. Everyone just wanted to finish the ceremony. The students began to leave, saying that it was none of their business and that they did not care about these secrets, since the Bureau of Oddities should take care of it. Also, in addition to everything, there will be other rewards that they will learn about later. But for now he is giving everyone the opportunity to think and choose. Having recovered from the shock of the information received, began to evaluate and think about the new proposal received. And those who distinguish themselves can even become reserve members in the Bureau of Oddities, and this was a very good opportunity. But Bernard also made a promise on behalf of the Bureau of Oddities that those who stayed and completed this task would be admitted to Tsinghua University in the capital. The purpose of the man's visit was to conduct another secret test. It was not forced and those who did not want to participate could immediately leave the place. Bernard says that you don't need to wait for the end of the world to understand this and it is very important to pass the test in the secret world in full. Many people entered the secret world and immediately left. Some somehow completed the test, and everyone should understand this very well. People could enter the secret world, but creatures from the secret world could also enter the human world. Everyone listened silently, and everyone's faces were filled with horror and fear. On the 13th of March, 122 according to the calendar of the secret world, in the famous amusement park in Shanghai, a clown dismembered people, resulting in the death of 144 people, including 86 minors. And they made clothes from the skin of the dead and hung them on the balconies. It was a terrible sight that you wouldn't want anyone to see. On September 23, 121, according to the calendar of the secret world, 3,214 residents of one of the micro-districts in the mountainous region disappeared in an instant. Bernard tells everyone to be quiet because he is going to talk now and he didn't want to hear any sound from now on. Jake replies that suddenly attacking him would be against the law and he didn't want to go to jail at all, to which Margaret says that there is nothing wrong with that, because she has already done it. She says that she can easily cope, since the spirit inside the man, according to their estimates, is Class D and he will be like a brother to her. Suddenly Margaret appears and says that she can deal with the man if he scared him. The guy gets angry and replies that he wasn't scared at all. Jake had a bad feeling and thought that something big was going to happen soon. And the Bureau of Oddities is a government agency, and this is the first time its members have appeared at a graduation ceremony. The girl says that in past years, universities deliberately created a hype around admissions to test the reaction of new students and find out whether their grades were true. Eve was surprised that the man from the Bureau of Oddities arrived here in person, to which the guy asks her how secret they are. From the outside it seems strange to the young man, because the man was peering at him with a strange smile on his face. Jake was amazing because despite the incident, he acted calmly and looked serene. But there was one person to whom he paid attention and confirmed the words of his superiors. This man was Bernard. He tells the graduates that the country has no future if the younger generation is like them. Suddenly, a man with many scars on his face entered the hall, who was extremely disappointed with the reaction of the graduates. The graduates began to panic, shouting that secrets had broken into the real world, and began to look for their teachers. This blood flowed from the hands of secrets, entangled in thorny chains and hanging right above the stage. A drop of blood fell from the ceiling directly onto the microphone in front of the principal, who was giving an inspiring speech to graduates. He was interrupted by a concerned Margaret, who told the hero that something was happening in the hall. Jake was surprised by her appearance and asked why she didn't sit down with her class, but decided to approach him. It was Eva, who also came to the graduation ceremony. Then a girl came up to him and asked if she could sit next to him. Remembering his performance, Jake hoped to receive everyone's praise for it, although the administration usually does not disclose the grades of its students. The next day, sitting in the assembly hall, the hero firmly decided that the job chosen by his sister was clearly not for him, and in this life he would not waste time on it. His sister stared at him silently at first, then said that she knew his true abilities, and he would not be able to complete this test, after which she pulled him home. Having calmed the angry spirit, the hero told his sister that in fact he had passed the test and even the nightmare regime. Completely forgetting what she was talking about with Jake a minute ago, she said that she would crush his sister right after he helped her find her head. Hearing her sister's words, Margaret became very angry.